In a moment that sent shockwaves through the political landscape, investigative journalist Isabel Oakeshott unveiled a startling revelation on live television. Her exposé centred on a concealed scandal in Southport, implicating Prime Minister Keir Starmer and shaking the very foundations of the Labour Party. This disclosure has not only tarnished Starmer's reputation, but also ignited a firestorm of public outrage and political turmoil. Isabel Oakeshott's revelation brought to light a deeply troubling incident in Southport, previously shrouded in secrecy. The incident involved a violent attack that resulted in multiple casualties, with the suspect, Axel Rudakubana, later found to possess materials linked to extremist ideologies. Despite the gravity of the situation, the government, under Starmer's leadership, initially refrained from classifying the attack as terrorism, citing a lack of clear motive. This decision raised eyebrows, especially when it emerged that Rudakubana had access to materials associated with Al-Qaeda and had been charged under the Terrorism Act. The government's handling of the situation drew criticism for its lack of transparency and the perceived attempt to downplay the severity of the incident. Further scrutiny revealed that the Labour Party had accepted significant donations and gifts, including expensive clothing and accommodations, from affluent donors like Lord Wahid Ali. These revelations painted a picture of a political establishment more concerned with preserving its image than addressing the concerns of the public. The public's response was swift and unforgiving. Social media platforms were inundated with calls for accountability, and a petition demanding Starmer's resignation garnered millions of signatures. The Labour Party found itself in a precarious position, grappling with internal dissent and a loss of public trust. Oakeshott's exposé served as a catalyst, bringing to the forefront issues of integrity, transparency, and the responsibilities of those in power. As the dust settles, questions remain about the extent of the cover-up and the implications for the future of the Labour Party. The Southport scandal has not only exposed potential lapses in judgment, but also highlighted the challenges of maintaining public trust in an era where information is both abundant and scrutinised. The coming days will be crucial in determining whether the party can navigate this crisis, or if it marks the beginning of a significant political realignment. The moment Isabel Oakeshott opened her mouth on live television, a political earthquake began to rumble through Westminster. With piercing clarity and unnerving calm, she dropped a bombshell that stunned the entire studio and sent shockwaves through the nation. "We are being lied to," she declared, eyes locked on the camera. "And the man leading the deception is none other than Keir Starmer." What followed was a forensic takedown of Labour's most tightly guarded secrets, meticulously detailed, brutally honest, and impossible to ignore. Isabel laid bare what she called the calculated and deliberate cover-up, orchestrated under Starmer's leadership, a betrayal so vast it left both journalists and viewers frozen. For months, she claimed, vital documents had been hidden, critical inquiries silenced, and whistleblowers intimidated. This wasn't just a political scandal. It was the controlled demolition of trust in the Labour Party, and it was happening live. According to Oakeshott, it all began with a dossier, one so explosive it had been buried by Starmer's inner circle to avoid total collapse. She described leaked emails, encrypted messages, and secret meetings where Labour operatives allegedly discussed how to suppress evidence tied to foreign lobbying, financial misconduct, and internal manipulation. Names were named, dates were given. The paper trail, she insisted, was undeniable. And what made her revelations even more damning was the implication that Starmer himself had not only known about this scandal, but had played a direct role in containing it. She claimed the former director of public prosecutions used legal know-how to exploit loopholes and intimidate internal investigators. One particularly chilling moment was when she referenced a confidential memo reportedly signed off by Starmer, which authorised the removal of potentially damaging files from Labour's internal archives, files that may now be permanently destroyed. The live audience was breathless. Commentators tried to intervene, but Isabel was unrelenting. With the confidence of someone holding all the receipts, she went deeper, describing how Starmer's team had allegedly redirected attention by orchestrating media diversions, targeting political enemies, and even briefing journalists to discredit dissenters. The narrative was chilling. This wasn't incompetence, it was control. A manufactured image of integrity masking a machinery of deception. The revelations touched on Labour's connections with powerful donors, overseas interests, and strategic appointments that served to send and insulate Starmer from scrutiny. According to Isabel, several MPs had raised concerns internally but were threatened with deselection or quietly removed from key committees. This was no longer about policy disagreements, It was about absolute power and the lengths to which Starmer would go to preserve it. As the programme continued, social media exploded. The hashtag #StarmerCoverUp began trending within minutes. Millions watched, replayed, and dissected every word Isabel spoke. Analysts across the political spectrum were forced to respond. Some tried to downplay her claims, calling them politically motivated, but others couldn't deny the evidence piling up. Conservative figures seized the moment to demand an independent inquiry. Even members of Labour's own shadow cabinet began to release cautious statements, calling for full transparency and accountability at the highest levels. The political atmosphere had turned radioactive. The Prime Minister's office issued a brief but pointed response. These are serious allegations that merit immediate investigation. For Starmer, the walls were closing in. What made Isabel's exposé even more dangerous for Labour was her credibility. As a seasoned political journalist, she had a history of breaking major stories. She was no stranger to controversy, but she was also no amateur. Her sources were solid, her delivery was meticulous, and her motive, at least on the surface, was accountability. She insisted that this wasn't about political allegiance, but truth. If we can't hold our leaders accountable, she said, then we are no longer living in a democracy, but a managed illusion. Her words landed with the weight of a gavel striking down in a courtroom, the kind of statement that becomes a historical soundbite. Behind the scenes, Labour Party HQ went into crisis mode. Insiders reported emergency meetings, furious calls, and damage control spinning at full speed. Staffers were told to maintain silence. Legal teams were reportedly assembled overnight to assess the fallout. Meanwhile, journalists began digging. Archival footage, deleted tweets, and previously overlooked reports were resurrected to piece together the larger puzzle. Everything Isabel had said was now under a magnifying glass, and to the horror of Labour strategists, much of it was beginning to check out. The cover-up that had been buried beneath layers of bureaucracy was now erupting into daylight. The pressure on Keir Starmer himself intensified rapidly. Questions were shouted at him as he exited a press conference, but he offered no comment. His usual composed demeanour seemed rattled. Political commentators noted a rare crack in his public image, a sense of unease in a man who prided himself on control. Behind closed doors, MPs loyal to Starmer reportedly confronted him, demanding explanations and reassurances. Some are said to have threatened resignation if a formal inquiry isn't announced. Others are preparing internal leadership challenges, waiting to see how the public responds in the coming days. As the dust began to settle on that explosive broadcast, one thing was certain: British politics would never be the same. Isabel Oakeshott had lit the fuse, and now the entire nation watched to see whether the structure of Labour under Starmer would implode or survive the storm. The silence from the top is growing louder, the evidence is mounting, and the people, betrayed and angry, are demanding justice. This is not just a scandal, it's a reckoning, and it's only just begun. In the immediate aftermath of Isabel Oakeshott's live bombshell, the Labour Party found itself plunged into chaos. The fallout was swift, merciless, and impossible to contain. Within hours, the cracks that had long been papered over inside the party widened into deep fractures. Discontent that had been simmering beneath the surface erupted into an all-out civil war. Prominent Labour MPs who had once stood shoulder to shoulder with Keir Starmer began to speak out. Some with cautious words of concern, others with open fury. Anonymous briefings flooded the media. WhatsApp messages from disgruntled backbenchers were leaked. Long-standing tensions, ideological divides, and personal vendettas were now out in the open, and all of it pointed in one direction: the beginning of the end for Keir Starmer. At the heart of the rebellion was a growing sense of betrayal. Many MPs believed they had been misled, manipulated into defending a leader who may have orchestrated, or at least permitted the cover-up now exploding in the public eye. As the allegations intensified, calls for Starmer's resignation grew louder. By midday, several high-profile Labour figures, including 2 former leadership contenders, publicly called for a no-confidence vote. These weren't political outsiders or fringe voices. They were influential members with deep roots in the party. One MP, speaking anonymously to The Telegraph, described the situation as untenable, adding, "We were promised transparency and integrity. What we got was silence and secrecy. Starmer must go." Behind closed doors, the mood turned toxic. Shadow cabinet meetings, once tightly controlled and loyal to Starmer's vision, devolved into shouting matches. Reports emerged of furious rows between top Labour strategists and senior MPs demanding clarity. Some accused Starmer's team of attempting to gaslight the party by downplaying the allegations and stalling any formal investigation. Others argued that any delay would only further damage Labour's credibility ahead of the general election. The ideological divides that have long haunted Labour between centrist modernisers and traditional left-wingers were now fused with a broader outrage over leadership ethics. Starmer, once seen as the unifier of a fractured party, now found himself at the centre of a storm that threatened to tear the movement apart. Adding fuel to the fire was the re-emergence of figures who had been sidelined under Starmer's leadership. Diane Abbott, John McDonnell, and others who had remained relatively quiet since Corbyn's exit began issuing pointed statements. Though none defended the alleged cover-up, they used the opportunity to criticise what they called the authoritarian culture cultivated under Starmer. "This isn't just about one scandal," Abbott said in a televised interview. "It's about a pattern of silencing dissent, centralising power, and treating MPs like liabilities rather than colleagues." Her words were echoed by grassroots activists across the country, many of whom had grown disillusioned with what they saw as the Labour leadership's corporate drift and obsession with media optics over real accountability. Meanwhile, local constituency parties began to revolt. In cities like Manchester, Bristol, and Sheffield, members convened emergency meetings to discuss the unfolding crisis. Motions of no confidence were tabled. Resignations from local leadership positions began to mount. Several CLPs issued open letters condemning the national leadership's silence and demanding an immediate suspension of those implicated in the alleged cover-up. What had started as a media exposé was now mutating into a full-blown organisational collapse. Labour's once cohesive election machine was now jammed by distrust, confusion and fury. Volunteers withdrew. Donors paused funding. And internal polling, quietly leaked to the press, showed a dramatic dip in public trust. Amid the chaos, Starmer's inner circle attempted a last-ditch operation to salvage control. A carefully worded statement was released, insisting that Labour took the allegations extremely seriously and would launch a thorough internal review. But it was too little, too late. Critics blasted the statement as vague and evasive. More damaging still, several MPs reported that they hadn't even been informed of the review before it was announced, fueling suspicions that the leadership was acting unilaterally to protect itself. In one particularly damning moment, a Labour frontbencher resigned live on air, stating that "The party I joined no longer exists under this leadership." The resignation clip went viral within minutes. The press seized the opportunity. Newspapers across the political spectrum ran screaming headlines. Pundits debated whether Starmer could survive the week. Conservative ministers gleefully pounced on Labour's implosion, framing it as proof that the opposition lacked the moral authority to govern. Nigel Farage, never one to miss an opening, posted a video accusing Starmer of running Labour like a dictatorship and called for a general election. As the firestorm intensified, even Labour's allies in the media began to turn. The Guardian, long supportive of Starmer, published an editorial questioning whether he still held the moral legitimacy to lead. In the midst of the chaos, one question dominated every conversation in Westminster: who would replace him? Names began circulating. Angela Rayner, despite her own controversies, was floated as a possible interim leader. Wes Streeting and Yvette Cooper were discussed as centrist stabilisers. Even Andy Burnham, the mayor of Greater Manchester, was reportedly being urged to consider a return to national politics. The scramble for succession had begun, even as Starmer clung desperately to control. But with every hour, that control slipped further from his grasp. The Parliamentary Labour Party was no longer merely divided, it was imploding. By evening, the situation had reached critical mass. A group of 43 MPs, representing a broad swathe of Labour factions, signed a joint letter demanding Starmer's resignation. The letter, made public through political journalists on social media, was brutal in its tone. It accused Starmer of betraying the party's values, eroding internal democracy, and presiding over a culture of fear and secrecy. "We can no longer support a leader who puts loyalty to himself above loyalty to the truth," it read. The letter ended with a simple but chilling phrase: "Step aside before the party is irreparably broken." As Labour's internal war escalated and calls for Keir Starmer's resignation grew louder, the media landscape turned into a battlefield of its own. Within hours, major outlets like The Telegraph, The Times, and even The Guardian were running front-page stories covering every new leak, every backbencher's rebellion, and every resignation. Political reporters camped outside Westminster, chasing MPs for reactions as the scandal unfolded in real time. Social media platforms, especially X, formerly Twitter, were flooded with trending hashtags like #Starmer resign, #Labour crisis, and #Isabel bombshell. What had begun as a single exposé had now become the epicenter of a national conversation on political trust, party integrity, and leadership failure. Into this chaos stepped Nigel Farage, who seized the moment with ruthless precision. Known for his media instincts and populist flair, Farage launched an immediate and aggressive campaign to capitalise on Labour's implosion. In a scathing press conference streamed live on GB News and viewed by millions across platforms, Farage declared that Keir Starmer has not only betrayed the Labour Party, but has betrayed the British people. His words struck like a hammer. Framing himself as the only political figure willing to call out the establishment's rot, Farage accused Labour and the Conservatives alike of hiding behind bureaucratic walls, while ordinary Britons suffered from the consequences of mass immigration, grooming scandals, and rising crime. With Reform UK already surging in recent polls, Farage's timing couldn't have been more lethal. As Labour stumbled, Reform began courting disillusioned voters and even Labour MPs. In what many saw as a political earthquake, 2 backbench Labour MPs were spotted in closed-door meetings with Farage's top advisers. Though they initially denied any defection plans, rumours quickly spread of secret negotiations. Reform UK wasted no time capitalising on the speculation, releasing a slick campaign video titled Time for Truth, featuring former Labour voters and activists expressing disgust with Starmer's leadership. The video racked up over 5 million views in 24 hours. The impact was immediate and dramatic. Reform UK's membership numbers reportedly spiked. Online donations surged. And perhaps most significantly, a fresh YouGov poll revealed that Reform had overtaken Labour in several northern constituencies, once considered impenetrable strongholds for the party. The media frenzy grew even more intense when Farage hinted, during a late-night interview, that several sitting MPs were on the verge of switching parties. Though he declined to name names, the statement was enough to send panic through Labour HQ. Mainstream broadcasters couldn't ignore the storm. BBC News, ITV, and Sky News all ran special panels dissecting the implications of Labour's collapse and Reform's rise. Commentators who once dismissed Farage as a political sideshow now debated his potential as a kingmaker, or even a future prime ministerial contender. Meanwhile, Starmer's aides struggled to contain the narrative. Every attempt to shift focus back to Labour's policy agenda was drowned out by wall-to-wall coverage of the unfolding scandal. Even neutral anchors and journalists began asking the uncomfortable question: had Labour finally lost the public's trust for good? With pressure mounting from all sides, Starmer's team was forced into reactive mode, issuing one damage control statement after another. But as each hour passed, it became clear that the momentum was no longer in their hands. The media had turned against them. Reform was on the offensive, and Nigel Farage, with his trademark grin and relentless messaging, stood triumphant atop the political wreckage, broadcasting one simple, devastating message: the establishment is falling, it's our time now. If you found this exposé eye-opening, don't stay silent, take a stand. Share this video with your friends and family to spread the truth the mainstream media won't show you. Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update as the political drama unfolds. Your voice matters now more than ever. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Do you think Starmer's days are numbered? Should Reform UK rise to power? The battle for Britain's future is happening right now, and you are part of it. Stay informed, stay bold, and stay tuned.